Hi, my name is Daniel Munro. I'm a philosopher and political scientist at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at the University of Toronto. I have two teenage daughters, and every once in a while they'll come home from school and tell me about a digital skills activity or a lesson that they had that day. Things like learn to code sessions, cyber safety workshops, or media literacy classes. And part of me is happy to hear that they have opportunities to develop the kind of skills that they will need to navigate the digital world. But only part of me is happy. My 16-year-old also volunteers at the Ottawa Public Library in a program called Tech Buddies. She and her colleagues help people with limited digital skills complete a range of online tasks. So, for example, they help our older neighbors send emails and manage privacy settings on their accounts. They help new immigrants complete online forms and younger neighbors who don't have technology at home to go online. The Tech Buddies program is fantastic, and I'm really proud of my 16-year-old for being a part of this program. In incremental but meaningful ways, she's helping to bridge the digital skills divides that we have in our community. But again, only part of me is happy. Another part of me is actually uncomfortable with some digital skills programs and advocacy. Not because I think digital skills aren't important. They are essential, and I think we should teach them. I actually help design and evaluate some digital skills programs, so I have some skin in the game. But I worry about how digital skills advocacy sometimes reinforces the idea that safe and accessible participation in the online world, in the digital world, is primarily an individual responsibility rather than a collective responsibility. I worry about emphasizing individual skills so much that tech firms and policymakers feel that they can shirk responsibility for improving the digital landscape that we all share. The cultural anthropologist Madeline Ellish worries that we're turning technology users into, and I love this phrase, turning technology users into moral crumple zones and liability sponges. Moral crumple zones and liability sponges. Great phrases. That is blaming users when things go wrong rather than the structures and systems that set them up to fail in the first place. So what do we mean by this? What does she mean by this? Well, consider accessibility to start. So participating in digital life, as we all know, requires access to technology. But that's technology that many people simply don't have. So the CRTC, for example, reports that while 90% of households in Canada have access to internet at recommended speeds, that falls to less than 40% in rural communities and less than 30% on First Nation reserves. So people in rural communities and on reserve can have stellar digital skills, but without decent infrastructure, they can't participate in digital life as equals. Or consider algorithmic decision-making, as we call it. So there are many decisions about social program eligibility and immigration and these sorts of things, as well as customer service and private sector organizations that are made with the assistance of automated systems, that is, systems that analyze data to determine eligibility, entry, and engagement. But as we've learned, many automated systems are rife with bias. And as a result, individuals and sometimes whole communities are denied services to which they are entitled or blocked from entering countries that they should be allowed to enter. And these exclusions often track demographic features such as gender, race, class, and ability. And what's more, experts like Virginia Eubanks and Rua Benjamin have found that people who use automated systems in their work tend to view the outputs of these systems as unimpeachable, that is, as more reliable than their own judgment, even when they know that the systems are generating poor results or bad results. Again, digital skills are important, but on their own, they won't protect us in the digital world. Even people with advanced digital skills are susceptible. You can make all the right choices about how to set up your privacy settings, whether to share data or not share data. You can understand algorithmic bias. but the underlying structures and motives of the digital world still leave you and me vulnerable. One last example. Those of you who spend time online know that sooner or later, almost everyone will experience some amount of harassment or abuse, which is often racist, homophobic, ableist, or all of the above. This is what worries me most about my girls being online. According to the Pew Research Center, women and girls are at least 3 times more likely than men and boys to experience online harassment. And the US Surgeon General recently warned that online harassment and misinformation may actually harm children psychologically and physically, for example, by encouraging eating disorders. So it's not surprising then that digital skills programs emphasize cyber safety, especially for girls. And we've become fairly good at warning targeted communities about what they might face and developing some strategies that they can use to deal with the online abuse that they might face. But we're not good at requiring the makers and owners of technologies to develop the critical perspectives, practices, and sense of responsibility they need to do better. Nor are we especially good at changing the underlying economic incentives that reinforce and amplify misinformation, harassment, and abuse. So if we want an equitable, just, and safe digital world, and I think we should, if we want that, then we need to challenge digital infrastructure that excludes, we need to challenge technologies that reinforce bias, and we need to challenge systems and incentives that amplify harmful content. Yes, again, we need to help individual users develop the skills that they need to participate and survive in the digital world, but we also need to equip tech makers and regulators with the skills and responsibility to reimagine and reshape the digital world in safer, fairer, and more hopeful directions. Thank you.